Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. My name is Dale Skaggs, and I'm delighted to serve as your worship associate this morning and to welcome you fully into this space. We welcome people of all genders, sexualities, ages, races, ethnicities, histories, and bodies here. We welcome your mind, your heart, and your spirit here. We welcome all you are bringing with you today and all your heart longs to set down. We extend a special welcome to each guest who's with us this morning. We're glad you've joined us, and we invite you to fill out a welcome card located in a pew rack in front of you and drop it in the offering plate later in the service. Guests may also pick up a welcome packet in the back of the sanctuary, where folks will also find hearing assist devices and Braille hymnals. And a fragrance-free area is located at the front right of the sanctuary in the first few pews. If you are a visiting family, including children or youth, after the time for all ages, which is noted in your order of service, please join the children's recessional and head across the hall to the common room. There you will be greeted by someone who will orient you to a religious education. Immediately following the service, everyone is invited for coffee and conversation in the common room. My name is Dale, and I invite you to come talk to me at the guest table there. As a way to engage at First Church, I invite everyone to explore the announcements insert for the numerous opportunities available here. I want to draw your attention to a few of those. The forum this morning is titled Trickleby Cafe, Cheerful Hearts, Continual Feast, and Cozy Chapel. Presented by the Reverend Christy Melby Gibbons, who is Executive Director of Trickleby Cafe. Established in 2016, Trickleby is a pay-what-you-can cafe. Regardless of customers' ability to pay, they serve delicious, nutritious, freshly made food in the Sherman Park neighborhood. The chronologically gifted potluck is today at 12:30 p.m. in Max Auto Hall up on the second floor. If you don't have a dish to share, come anyway. We'll be glad to have you. And today is the last day to register for adult spiritual development class, Doing the Most Right Thing, a review of ethics and morality led by member Ken Solis. The class begins this Thursday evening, January 30. You can register online at the website or at the RE table during coffee hour. And now Kimberly has a special announcement.
Can you give us an hour of your time? Every Sunday morning, there is an opportunity to connect with a young person about during their faith formation journey. They need adults who will be guided and guide them. Volunteering in religious education has never been simpler and makes a huge difference in our faith community. Please visit the religious education table today in the Leanhouse Common Room to speak with Lillian or myself or a member of the Children's Religious Education team, and they'll let you know how you can help out and play an important role in the life of a young Unitarian Universalist. You'll be glad you did. Thank you.
You can find details on these and more events in the announcements insert. And before we go on now, just a quick note to say that we are delighted to have Teresa Drews, our staff collaborative pianist, leading our music this morning. Welcome, Teresa. And where else this morning could you go and hear an oboe and a bassoon with a piano? Finally, please silence any electronic devices for the remainder of the service. And once again, I welcome you to First Church by inviting you to join me in the unison reading of our mission, which is printed in your order of service. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, and inspire action. And now I invite Gordy Miller to come and help light our chalice.
Our opening words this morning are from the Reverend A. Powell Davies. He says, "Let me tell you why I come to church. I come to church, and I would whether I was the preacher or not, because I fall far below my own standards, and I need to be constantly brought back to them. I'm afraid of becoming selfish and indulgent, and my church of the free spirit, brings me back to what I want to be. I could easily despair, doubt, and dismay could overwhelm me, but my church renews my courage and my hope. It is not enough that I should think about the world and its problems at the level of a newspaper report or a magazine discussion. It could be too soon become too low a level. I must have my conscience sharpened until it goads me to the most thorough and responsible thinking that I am capable of. I must feel again the love that I owe to others. I must not only hear about it, but I must feel it. In church, I do. I am brought towards my best, in every way towards my best. Will you please rise in either body or spirit and join us in
The story I have for you today is called The Invisible String by Patricia Karst. Jeremy and Liza, the twins, were asleep one calm, quiet night. Suddenly, it began to rain very hard. Thunder rumbled, and it got so loud, it woke them up. "Mommy, Mommy," they cried as they ran out to her. "Don't worry, you two. It's just the storm making all that noise. Go back to bed." "We want to stay close to you," said Jeremy. "We're scared." Mom said, "You know, we're always together, no matter what." "But how can we be together when you're out here and we're in bed?" said Liza. And then Mom held something right in front of them and said, "This is how." Rubbing their sleepy eyes, the twins came a little closer to see what was Mom holding. "When I was about your age, my mommy first told me about the invisible string." "I don't see a string," said Jeremy. "You don't need to see the invisible string. People who love each other are always connected by a very special string made of love." "But if you can't see it, how do you know it's there?" said Liza. "Even though you can't see it with your eyes, you can feel it with your heart, and you know that you are always connected to everyone that you love." When you're at school and you miss me, your love travels all the way along that string until I feel it tug at my heart. And we tug right back, and we feel it in our hearts, said Jeremy. Does Jasper the cat have an invisible string? Liza asked. She sure does, said Mom. And best friends like me and Lucy? Asked Liza. Best friends too. How far can that string reach? Asked Jeremy. Anywhere and everywhere. Would it reach me if I were a submarine captain deep in the ocean? Yes, even there. Or a mountain climber? Even there. A dancer in France? Even there. A jungle explorer? Even there. How about an astronaut in space? Yes, even there. And then Jeremy quietly asked, can my string reach all the way to Uncle Brian in heaven? Yes, even there. Does the string go away when you're mad at us? Never, said Mom. Love is stronger than anger, and as long as love is in your heart, the string will always be there. Even when you get older and you can't agree about things like what movie to see, or what game to play in the back seat, or what time to go to bed. Hey, you two are supposed to be in bed. And with that, they all laughed as Mom chased the twins back to their beds. And within minutes, they were asleep, even though the storm was still making the same noises outside. And as they slept, they started dreaming of all the invisible strings they have, and all the strings their friends have, and their friends' friends have, until everyone in this world was connected by invisible strings. And from deep inside, they could clearly see now that no one is truly ever alone. The end. Please join us in our
I invite you to join in a time of contemplation now, which will be followed by silence, followed by the seated singing of Spirit of Life. So go ahead and take a moment to do whatever you need to do to be comfortable in your body. Maybe you feel the ground beneath your feet. Maybe you feel the air just above the top of your head. Maybe you feel your breath moving in and out of your belly. Just take a moment to come into being here and now. Spirit of life and love, Holy One of our being and our becoming, that which is sacred within, among, and beyond us. May we feel the string connecting us this morning. May our connections lead us to love beyond belief, and may our beliefs lead us to shared work for justice. May our beliefs be in integrity with love, internally and externally, feeling, ground, action. And may we weave our individual loves, our individual morals together into one communal fabric, a love ethic that acts for all of being. May it be so.
The first discussion about politics I remember hearing was between my father and one of my older brothers. Now, it wasn't actually much of a discussion or argument. It was really a long, rambling discourse by my brother about the political theory he had just been reading, which had led him to a very firm conclusion about which candidate our parents should vote for in the election for Illinois governor. Dad just listened quietly and didn't offer much except to say eventually that he would likely vote for the other candidate. Hearing this, my brother was eager to engage in debate. He wanted to offer his carefully reasoned explication of whatever political philosophy he'd been exploring, and he sort of demanded to hear the theories of politics behind Dad's vote. I can still hear Dad's response. He just quietly said, "Well, I don't know if this is a political philosophy or not, but I vote the way I do because when the people I vote for are in the State House, down in Springfield, I don't see nearly as many men eating out of the garbage bins on the street. And I don't think people should have to eat garbage. For him, it was, I think, simply a personal moral decision. When somebody needs help, a person should do what they can to help. And what he could do for those people was vote. But beyond that, I think he considered his individual choices in a broader context as well. Dad was a member shareholder of the local farmers cooperative, and at year's end, he got a dividend, some small percentage of the business he'd done there. Being a big family on a small farm, even that small dividend was important, so I was puzzled that he also bought some of his supplies from the other grain elevator in town, where he got no rebate. When I asked why he didn't do all his business with the co-op, he said, "I think having 2 successful elevators in town is better than just one, because it helps make the whole town more successful." And I thought to myself, that's crazy. Our little bit of business makes no difference. We were tenant farmers, not landowners. Money was always scarce. Our cars and our farm machinery were always used, never bought new. So why would he give up that dividend, however small? But I came to understand that, yes, he knew his small bit of business was akin to his one vote. By itself, it didn't matter all that much, but he also understood, and in a very practical way, not theoretically, how his personal choices fit into and influenced an ethical construct of strong community. Somewhere around that same time, I stayed overnight once with a classmate at his grandfather's farm. I didn't know the grandpa, and I was pretty intimidated by what seemed his really gruff manner and blunt questions about how did I know his grandson, did I play sports, was I a good student, and so on. But then he paused for a moment and he asked, "What's your last name again?" I answered and he said, "Ah, are you one of Grady's boys?" I said I was, and his whole manner changed, and with a kindlier look on his face, he said, "Well, good, son, because your dad is one of the most successful men I know." I confess, at the time, I didn't really know why he would say that, but looking back later, I decided he was right. He saw integrity as success.
Some of you may have heard me tell the story from my climate organizing days about a fellow organizer who spoke about climate change to an audience in the Bible Belt. Now, this young woman was from that area, and she was familiar with evangelical Christian culture. So she tailored her speech to emphasize creation care and being good stewards of the earth. She called on her neighbors to care for God's green earth, and she invited them to work with her to be part of God's work for justice by being good stewards of that earth. After her talk, a woman who was in the audience came up to her and complimented her on her speech, and my friend felt successful. Then the woman said, "It's so sweet that you care so much about the earth, but honey, you have to understand, God's gonna burn it." Her experience of success took a nosedive. In the liberal religious tradition, we understand religion as knowing through the lens of modern knowledge, rather than biblical or any other traditional authority. To be clear, when I say religious liberalism, I'm talking about a theological category in religion, which refers to the nature of our understanding about knowledge. It's a different category than what some people might call the religious left, which refers to political leanings. Being religiously liberal means that our beliefs change as human understanding of knowledge grows. One of the pillars of liberal theology, James Luther Adams, argued that no single moment in history should be able to claim a singular and enduring truth because reality is being continuously created. But this leaves the question, as Unitarian Universalists and religious liberals, what do we believe? As UUs, we have committed ourselves to a free and open search for truth and meaning. We're a religion of seekers, and yet, at some point, something might be found in that seeking. So how do we hold out hope for a foundness while also maintaining our commitment to the seeking? How do we include those in our midst who have already found something, as well as those who are in their own process of seeking right now? How do we create a religious identity that is both about seeking and includes what may or may not eventually be found? In our work to be religiously liberal, we must find a way to include the multiplicity of stories, the many ways to seek and to find, and simultaneously find some stories that bind us together, stories that we can return to again and again that provide deep and layered meaning for our lives. The Reverend Dr. Rebecca Ann Parker, theologian and former president of Starr King School for the Ministry, says that all human beings have a core operating system, some system of values, some big story about the world and how it works that undergirds our lives. Whether we realize it or not, we are operating on some core assumptions about what the world is like and what our role in that is. It's the task of the religious community to raise that core operating system up to the surface so that we might examine it and see its effects in the world and in our lives. That woman who told my organizing friend that it was sweet, that she cared about the earth, but that God was going to burn it, was working from her own core operating system. Her religion had taught her about how the world worked, and that affected the way that she thought about and interacted with that world. She wasn't a bad person. She wasn't unkind or uncaring. Indeed, she had come up to compliment my friend on her speech. But her belief that God was going to burn the world led her to choices and behavior that did not express care for the world. Behavior that showed up most likely in things like recycling and fossil fuel consumption, but probably also in things like voting and decisions about how we take care of the common good. In Unitarian Universalism, we do not have a creed. We don't have a shared belief statement or a single set-in-stone story that everyone tells and has to believe in. This has led folks to say things like, you can believe whatever you want as a Unitarian Universalist. I've probably even said that myself at some point. And that might be used as shorthand, like it was for Dale's father in the story about saying, I don't know much about political philosophy, but I do care about the effects of decisions that people make in the world. Liberal religion does not assume that it doesn't matter what you believe. Rather, liberal religion recognizes that healthy belief is open to change. We expect growth and new learning to come as we continue to understand the world and humanity more deeply. We expect that our religion and our belief will be informed by humanity's progress, by new science, by modern knowledge, by evolving reason and understanding. Within that evolving framework, however, it matters what we believe. Believing that God's going to burn it has serious consequences for how we treat this earth. Conversely, believing in the science of climate change has led millions of people to change their behaviors and to lobby for changes in laws about burning fossil fuels. Believing that God made white people superior to other races has had pretty awful consequences for human behavior in this world. Conversely, believing that every human being is inherently worthy and has been created equal has meant that our Unitarian Universalist denomination has deliberately worked to become anti-racist. It matters what we believe. And even though we don't have a creedal statement, there are a number of foundational theological threads woven together in our Unitarian and Universalist tradition. They make up the tapestry of who we are as a faith, and that tapestry wraps us in possibility and covers the ground of our journey together as seekers and finders. Our tradition includes a theological thread that we are moving together towards justice. Writing about abolition of slavery in the 1800s, the Unitarian Transcendentalist minister Theodore Parker wrote, "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one, and my eye reaches but a little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight, but I can divine it by conscience. And from what I see, I am sure it bends towards justice." It's likely that this sermon from the 1800s inspired the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King to say the incredibly famous phrase, "Though the arc of the universe is long, it bends towards justice." That is an important theological thread in the tapestry of our faith. The story that no matter how hopeless and how painful our experience is right now, we will ultimately end up together in justice and in love. The way that this story functions in behavior and in the world is to give hope to the hopeless, to help us move when we're paralyzed by fear or dread or despair. And that theological thread may or may not include God. For some people, it's simply an evolutionary process moving towards increasing complexity and integration and harmony in which life itself is favored. For others, there is a loving God moving through the process, bringing the world along towards beloved community. We have a number of other threads in our buffet of core operating systems. One is the knowledge of today, science, and reason. Another, for which many Unitarian Universalists is primary, is listed first in our Unitarian Universalist 6 sources of wisdom, the direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder, which moves us towards a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. In his 1838 Divinity School address, Ralph Waldo Emerson argued that the intuition of the soul is the primary source of religious knowledge, and that it is its foremost authority. He told the Divinity School students to put down their books and to put away the mediating influence of other people's instructions and to go out into the world and experience the divine, to learn there for themselves what beauty and the earth and humanity had to teach them about the nature of reality and divinity. In Unitarian Universalism, we also have a core operating story about existentialism and a humanist story about our role within that world. In the existentialist story, the world simply is. It is not intelligent, it's not moving towards anything in particular, and it is human agency alone that creates and maintains morals and moves humanity and the community of living on earth towards or away from a concept that we have developed as human beings called justice. Albert Camus called this existentialism the benign indifference of the universe. In humanist theology, justice is a moral concept that humans developed. Because human beings alone have ethics, it is our human responsibility to uphold those ethics. Collective humanity is its own greater power. The beauty and the love that we create holds us together, and it's our vision of justice that propels us to ethical decisions and actions. This story functions to free people to collectively determine their vision of justice and empowers them to then pursue that understanding of what the good is that they have determined together. Another thread in our theological tradition, less prominent but still present, sees the process of life on earth as patterned towards destruction and chaos. It sees the general movement of history and humanity and nature as moving towards entropy. Things fall apart. Although our Unitarian theology originated by turning away from that worldview, our Unitarian theology originated when the founders of our Unitarian tradition said, actually, we think that the core of humanity is more good than evil. One can still hear the echoes of our Calvinist forebearers in our theological traditions. There are still liberal religious people and theologians who think humanity trends more towards evil than towards good. And one can see this worldview even more obviously in broader society. Indeed, it undergirds conservative politics, the story that the world is prone to disintegration. It's full of bad guys, and it's spinning faster and faster towards chaos. And therefore, we must be ever vigilant against the evil that's encroaching upon us, from our borders to our schools to our families. The way that I see this theology functioning is by increasing fear and boundaries and suspicion, and bringing people's attention towards defense. We must attend both to belief and to how belief functions in the world. How does what we believe cause us to act? What does it provide for those who believe it? In 2014, I helped lead the Beloved Conversations curriculum for connecting across difference with Unity Church Unitarian and 2 other congregations. Unity Church is a large Unitarian Universalist congregation in St. Paul with a high formal liturgy and culture and a majority middle and upper class white congregation. The other 2 churches that were involved in the conversations were both African American. One of them was a non-traditional Pentecostal Universalist congregation, and the other was a traditional Baptist congregation. During those beloved conversations for building relationships across difference, one of the Unitarian participants explained that through developing relationships with the folks in the other 2 congregations, she began to see how their faith was functioning in a way that she had not previously considered. As an atheist, she had spent most of her life dismissing and even deriding what she called the saving faiths for what she understood to be a superstitious belief in something unreasonable. But when she developed friendships with people who believed in a life-affirming version of that faith, she saw how their belief in something larger than themselves that saved people from poverty, saved people from oppression, from grief, and from despair, had functioned in their lives to restore hope and love. She saw how it caused her new friends to behave in loving and accepting ways that held out hope for an alternative future and an accepting love for her, an open atheist, as another child of God. Now, her connections across difference did not change her own beliefs about God, but seeing how her friends' different beliefs functioned in their lives gave her a newfound understanding of those other beliefs' value. In church, our work is to raise core operating systems up to the surface and examine them. You too have a story of how the world works. Do you know what that story is? Do you know how it functions in your life? Do you know what consequences it has for you and how you behave in the world, how you connect or don't with other people? What is your story? And what are its effects? As Unitarian Universalists, we're called to examine our own beliefs and to evaluate the merits and the consequences of a variety of beliefs. We use our reason to discern consequences for ourselves and for others. So the question is, How can we as a people recognize the complexity of how all human beings live their various faiths out in the world? For instance, the woman who told my organizer friend that God's gonna burn it, and the folks we worked with in Beloved Conversations in St. Paul would all say that they subscribe to the Christian story. But they interpret that set of stories in different ways, and it has different consequences for how they choose to behave in the world. Unitarian Universalism is a big tent when it comes to beliefs. We welcome people from a variety of belief backgrounds and traditions, but we also discern how those beliefs cause us to act in the world. There is a difference between an atheist whose understanding of the world is that we are called to create human justice on the basis of human-developed ethics, and an atheist who sees an indifferent world calling them to nihilism. There's a difference between a Christian whose core operating system teaches that some people are saved and some people are damned, and that causes them to behave in ways that are exclusionary and hateful. And a Christian whose core operating system teaches them that God is love, and then acts out that belief in the world by loving their neighbor. Discerning the different effects of belief is how we weave morals and ethics together in a congregational community that does not have a creed. We examine individual morals, individual core operating beliefs, and then we gather together with people with whom we share an ethic. Our beliefs might be different, but we share a love ethic and commit ourselves to gathering together to create positive consequences in the world. It's not only about internal right belief or external right behavior. It's not about salvation by grace or salvation by works, but rather it's the connection between the inner belief and the outer behavior that weaves us together in community. In the liberal religious church, our various theological strands meet and merge and make up our tapestry of faith. Here together we practice our beliefs, living them out in covenant among us and in relationship with the world beyond our walls. We ground our values in a community that both celebrates variety and multiplicity of stories and calls us more deeply into behavior of love. It is good to be with you all. May it be so. Will you please rise in body or spirit and join us in our responsive reading printed in your orders of service? This is excerpted from A Feminine Ethic of Risk, adapted by Sharon Welch. I'll begin. Love for others. A Unitarian Universalist grace. It leads us to accept blame for harm caused. And begin the long process of reparation and recreation. Grace brings joy. The finding of self in larger community. Grace is not the opposite of works. It is the gift of being loved and loving that enables the work of justice. And we would join in singing our closing hymn, number 34, though. Friends, may your internal morals be in integrity with communal ethics. May what is within be connected to what you do in the world. May it be so.